Welcome. There are times when a day begins with a quiet wait that is difficult to explain. Nothing obvious may have happened, and the world around you continues in its usual rhythm. Yet something inside feels slightly dimmed, as though the brightness of experience has been turned down for no apparent reason. Voices can seem a little further away, colors appear muted, and the motivation that usually carries a person through ordinary tasks can feel more sluggish than expected. Many people recognize this subtle heaviness when it appears, even though it rarely fits neatly into a category. It is not always sadness in the typical sense of the word. More often, it feels like a subtle detachment from things that once felt easier to connect with. Have you ever noticed how a mood like this can arrive without a clear invitation? Where a morning that began quite normally may gradually shift into something heavier, where even familiar activities can begin to feel as though they require more effort than they did the day before. And even small decisions sometimes carry a little more weight than usual. When this happens, the mind often begins searching for reasons. Something must have caused this shift, it assumes, yet the search does not always produce an answer. In some spiritual traditions, such as Buddhism, for example, moods like this are often compared to weather passing across an open landscape. Clouds gather somewhere beyond the horizon. The quality of the light changes almost imperceptibly, and even the air itself seems different for a while, even though the land beneath the sky remains the same ground it has always been. Human experience often moves in a similar rhythm. Energy seems to rise and fall of its own accord. Clarity appears for a while and then recedes again, while moments of enthusiasm sometimes give way to periods where everything feels just a little slower than it did before. Have you ever noticed how these emotional climates sometimes shift without a clear moment of transition? During such periods, attention has a tendency to settle inwards. The pace of experience slows slightly, and ordinary details begin to stand out in ways they might not during more happier, more energetic moments. Light resting against a wall in the late afternoon, the distant sound of water beginning to heat in a kettle, or the gentle movement of air across the skin can suddenly feel more noticeable than usual. None of these small moments alter the mood directly, yet they sometimes seem to exist alongside it, widening the space of experience just enough for other sensations to appear within the same field. In some Buddhist traditions, there is a quiet observation that experience changes not only through effort, but also through the gradual unfolding of conditions. When the circumstances that sustain a particular state begin to shift, the state itself often follows, not abruptly, but through a slow rebalancing that may only become visible in hindsight. This simple pattern is sometimes described as impermanence, though the word can sound more abstract than the experience itself. In everyday life, it appears as the ordinary way moods transform over time, even when they feel convincing while they are present. It can be interesting to notice how difficult it is to recreate the exact texture of a low day once it has passed. The mind remembers that the heaviness existed, yet the precise feeling of it often fades, much like the memory of a cloud formation that once filled the afternoon sky. While the mood is present, however, experience can feel very close and immediate. Thoughts may move with less momentum than usual, and familiar tasks can require slightly more effort, while conversations sometimes unfold more awkwardly, simply because words are harder to find. Many people recognize this subtle change in pace, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. Life continues, though it unfolds at a rhythm that differs from the one we might expect. Within these slower rhythms, certain observations sometimes become easier to notice. Even on these darker days, there can still be moments that carry a slightly different tone. A small laugh that appears unexpectedly during conversation, warmth from sunlight reaching through a window, or the quiet satisfaction that accompanies the completion of something simple. Such moments rarely erase the mood surrounding them, yet they can exist within it, almost like small openings in the cloud cover through which light briefly appears. In contemplative teachings, attention is sometimes compared to a lantern moving through a dim landscape. Wherever the lantern rests, detail becomes visible, while the areas outside its light fade temporarily into shadow. When a heavy mood settles across the mind, attention can naturally gather around that feeling, illuminating it so strongly that everything else seems to recede. Yet the lantern does not remain in one place forever. Attention shifts gradually from one element of experience to another, and as it moves, the wider environment begins to come back into view. Even within moments that contain heaviness, there may also be distant sounds, subtle movements in the room, or the steady rhythm of breathing continuing without conscious effort. Some Buddhist teachings speak of this difference as the space between identifying with an experience and simply observing it. When a mood fills all of our attention, it can feel overwhelming. Yet when attention widens again, we are able to gain a better perspective and see the impermanence of suffering. Recognizing this does not necessarily dissolve the mood, just as clouds rarely disappear the moment they are noticed. Still, the sense of confinement can soften slightly when experience is allowed to include more than one element at a time. In this way, the present moment may contain a quiet mixture of things: the heaviness of a mood that has arrived without explanation, the gentle sounds of the environment continuing around it, and the steady presence of the body resting where it is. Nothing in particular needs to change immediately for this moment to continue unfolding. Time moves forward, whether the mind feels bright or subdued, and somewhere within that quiet passage, the atmosphere often begins to shift again. Sometimes the change appears as a small spark of curiosity returning, or a slight easing of the weight that once felt central. For now, it may simply be enough to sit beside whatever mood happens to be present, allowing it to move through the wider landscape of experience, much as weather passes across open ground. Sometimes simply noticing is enough. Sometimes the mind finds its own rhythm again, and sometimes the simple act of remaining present with the unfolding moment allows a little more space to appear around whatever is being felt, leaving just enough room for the breath to continue and the day to move forward in its own time. If you found this video helpful at all, you're very welcome to like or subscribe. It really does help these videos reach other people who might need them too. Take care, and thank you for being here.